This week we work on a beautiful black crystal opal. Well, welcome guys. This time we're going to work on something that's a little bit unique, and it's not very often that you get a piece of opal that has no potch in it but is really dark. And when this kind of phenomenon happens, you get yourself a black crystal, and that's what I'm hoping to cut right now is a black crystal that that has no potch, but it has a natural tint inside the opal itself. Now, one thing that I really need to be careful of here is I've used the flashlight to look through the stone, and there is some cracks, and I think the cracks came from when it was dug out of the ground. The digger actually hit the knobby and put some shatters into it, so I do have to be careful, and I'm probably going to have to cut it a little bit smaller than expected. So what's happened here is I've just studied it for a bit, but what I'm doing is I'm just taking all the sand spots and pieces of dirt out of the stone as wherever I can. And funnily enough, when I was examining this piece, I was looking at cutting it from the opposite side to what I'm looking at now. So this was the side I was going to choose, and when I started working on the other side, which I thought was weaker colour, the pattern started to get bigger and nicer. So I've really taken the time to make sure that I can have both sides as a choice that I'm going to cut. But it seems that the opposite side is better than the side I had first chosen. Now that pattern there, it's quite a nice cloverleaf pattern, but there's more beautiful flagstone and more depth on the other side. So there is a chance that I could cut a double-sided gem, but I'm seeing that sand spot there that I'm just trying to get out now. That may cause some havoc in making it a perfectly clear double-sided gem. So we'll see how it goes and see where I get to when it comes to shaping the stone. As you guys know, I'm not into freeform shapes so much. I really like symmetrical shapes because I like a perfect cut. So this stone, even though it looks good now, it still will end up being an oval. And also the reason it's going to be an oval is I can see some fractures in it that I need to get out. So this is going to be a little bit smaller than it looks now. And the reason why you take a fracture out of a stone or a break is because if you have a break in a stone, it's not worth nearly as much as a perfectly clean, nice gem. So I am going to lose a bit of colour, but that will pay off in the fact that it'll be a perfect gem. As I'm making this shape closer and closer to a perfect oval, I'm keeping an eye on the sand spot on the back, the fractures in the side, and the ability to make a nice dome on both sides. And it's starting to turn out like I think I can only really polish one side. The other side is a little bit sandy, and that one sand spot's going to kind of ruin that double-sided stone. I could do it, but I will lose way too much colour. So as you can see here, I'm trying to shape the stone to as close as its finished shape as I can by hand, so that when I put it on the dop stick, it will be a lot easier to finish it off, shape, polish, and get all those nice rounded edges perfect. But before I count all my chickens, I just managed to spot a couple of cracks that are still there in the side of that stone. So I'm going to have to trim that in, unfortunately. So the stone's going to get a little bit smaller, but it has to be done. You can't leave a fracture in a stone. I can just see a little bit of crack left in there that needs to come out, and it's starting to make me a bit nervous because now the stone's starting to get a little bit too small for my liking. So anyway, we'll work on it and roll that dome a little bit and see if we can roll it out instead of cutting the stone in, and I think it seems to be working. It really dumbfounds me how something can look like such a straightforward cut and can still give you grief in the process of trying to get a beautiful gem out. You know, I'm quite happy with it, actually. It's a nice black crystal and it's going to polish up a treat. It just won't be the double-sided gem that I thought I would get. You know, it's coming up to the Opal Festival this week, where I'll be travelling out to Lightning Ridge to see a lot of old friends. But it's quite nostalgic because that's where my dad lived for 20-30 years, and I walk past his house where he lived, and I do get a little bit teary sometimes because, you know, I miss him a lot. He taught me everything I know, and he was a great dad. And I really wouldn't be here right now if he hadn't taught me how to cut opal. If he hadn't been in this industry, I would have probably done something else, maybe been an electrician, you never know. I do feel really lucky to be in an industry like this, you know. When somebody asks you, what do you do for a living? And I say, I'm an opal cutter. They say, wow, I've never met an opal cutter before. That's quite unique. And I really do enjoy being in this industry. It's such a wonderful industry and the people are beautiful, and well, most of them. But what I'm finding is this is a dying trade. This is a trade that people aren't sharing their knowledge about opal, and I feel honoured to be able to share this opal with you, all this knowledge, and so that it can be passed down from generation to generation. So because if it passes with my dad, then it passes with me. At least you guys get to see and get to know a bit about opal and keep the romance of opal going. I once had a crazy goal of making opal more popular than diamonds, and while we don't have the budget of De Beers, we do try our best to get as much knowledge and as much beauty out there in the form of flakes of colour in opal. When it comes to colour on colour, a black crystal is the epitome of beautiful colour. When you've got flakes of gem colour on top of each other with that 3D effect, black crystal is probably one of the best types of opal to be able to display that kind of play of colour. It's so beautiful. Really happy with this stone. I'm just evening up the back now. This is a skill that my dad taught me, and it took me many years to perfect, and I really haven't perfected it, but I've got it close. I'm still yet to see somebody be able to cut as well as my dad did by hand. So this gem ended up being a 5.47 carat black crystal opal. It sits in the black opal category, and it's magnificent. It's a brightness of 3 with a beautiful medium dome, and I've priced it around the $3,500, which is quite nice for a 3D colour on colour gem. If you like the way I've done this video, it's a little bit different, let me know in the comments and tell me what I could have done better. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time.